Hello, hi everyone. Hi, I am joined here by Louisa Dean for this next session. So Louisa is the head of comms at the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead and is the interim head of comms at Reading Borough Council. She's experienced comms and engagement professional with over 20 years of experience working in strategic, operational and delivering roles. She's got a strong focus on crisis comms and planning for large-scale events, and she's recently delivered the comms for the Queen's 90th birthday, Duke and Duchess Sussex's wedding, I can't speak, His Royal Highness Prince Philip's funeral, and of course the late Queen Elizabeth's funeral that's just happened. So I'm going to pass on to Louisa, who's going to talk all about organising and planning and comms behind these such significant events. So the floor is yours, Louisa.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So yes, I'm Louisa Dean. I'm going to talk you through how we have run comms for complex and sensitive issues. And I think within some of this, there are some tips that you can all use for some of your events as well. So just as a bit of an overview, obviously this is comms that we did for the procession, the committal service, but also we had the proclamation and obviously the announcement of death. So there was quite a lot of work that we did in Windsor over the 10 days. So how did we do it? So planning is obviously key for this event, and you can see me there. That's a lot of my team like digital lists. I'm not a fan of digital lists. I like good old-fashioned bits of paper. So on the board there, you've got all of our planning and our grid system. So the messaging for the first 24 hours, we'd already drafted, and we had tweets, graphics and emails ready for residents and councillors, and that was all drafted, ready to go within a matter of minutes. We also had a grid system for the planned messaging across all of our channels, and we had assets ready as well based on what was under embargo and what we could release and when. We'd also had things ready to react to, like Windsor's Busy and the Flora Tribute Guidance, which did keep changing. We also had all of our social media account holders briefed to pause normal content, and we had multiple meetings with key partners such as Thames Valley Police, and we built a really good multi-agency partner contact list, and that was built from the royal wedding in 2018. So the other thing we also need to know is about knowing your channels. So we have around 160,000 residents in Windsor and Maidenhead, but we know we can't reach everybody on our corporate channel. So what we do is we take in these channels, Visit Windsor, which is our tourism partner, Make Maidenhead, which is our town centre, and our libraries channel. And we ask them to share and amplify the messaging for us. But also the other top tip I would suggest is making sure that the councillors and stakeholders share your messaging as well. And that helped with getting some of our messaging out to a much broader audience. And the other one that really shocked me when I was putting this presentation together is that Nextdoor is the unsung hero here. We've got 29,000 followers on Nextdoor in Windsor and Maidenhead. So if you're not on that platform, I'd really recommend using it. So the other thing is about controlling the messaging, spreading the word. So we had a dedicated web page on the council's website, which had all of our London Bridge content on there. So anything from parking permits for residents to where people could park if they wanted to come and visit Windsor. It was all on one particular web page, so people could always see that update and that information. But we also expanded our comms operation. So I think you'll be shocked to hear we only have 3 people in the comms team normally. So we bring in the website, the libraries team, the customer service team, the museum, the town centre and the tourism team to support the work that we do for these particular events. But we also brought in mutual aid, and it was amazing. So I have worked in the Thames Valley for 20 years. I am only 28 surely, but I've worked here for a long time. And a lot of those partners are based on me having worked in that area for so long, but also attending meetings in Surrey, who were fantastic and provided so much support to me. There was also a few friends thrown into that mix, so people that I know from Affinity Trust and Cumberland Lodge who came and supported me. And we went from a team of 3 in the comms team to 48 in total working over that 10-day period. So that really shows you the level of work that we had to do and the amount of people we needed to support that. We also had a multi-agency hub, which I mentioned earlier. We had over 100 partner organisations on a rolling email chain, and they helped share and amplify those messages for us. And we also had a dedicated media hub, so all press inquiries went through into one particular place, and they weren't our comms officers dealing with it. It was a variety of mutual aid that was dealing with all of those press inquiries and media requests. So the other thing is about thinking creatively. So we couldn't just use the normal channels. So we took control of the VMS signs across the borough, and I don't know if you can see it on this image, but we put down there that Windsor was busy and people needed to think about how they were getting to Windsor on those particular days. But we also had printed copies of the road closure information that was in our libraries, so residents could access that. And I also nabbed the information governance team, so they were in my comms team for this particular piece of work. So we used council tax data to issue an email with tailored information to our residents in Windsor about the road closures and the impact it would have on them. So top tip, get them in your team, because then you get emails approved much quicker. And one thing that you might have spotted is it's difficult being in the Royal Borough sometimes, because we're not allowed to say a huge amount of stuff. So we're under embargo, we're governed by embargo, and we're not allowed to release certain amounts of information. So even though the press, and you can see on the left and the right, they were releasing information about what would happen on each day, they were releasing the final journey, they were releasing all sorts of information. We weren't allowed to do anything until the embargoes were lifted, which was quite frustrating for some people within the comms team. And it was frustrating for residents, I guess, as well, because they could see it in the Daily Mail, but from a council, we weren't allowed to talk about it officially. However, when we were able to share details, people were really supportive, and they tagged in their friends on Facebook. And you can see on this particular chain, we responded about pushchairs on the long walk, and people were reacting and responding and tagging in their friends. And we saw the reach of our posts grow on social media, and we also saw our page followers grow as well. So when you can talk, information is really valuable. So for any event, I would say we need to think about the risk. So the risk for Windsor was, do we have enough parking? And if any of you have been to Windsor, the parking is pretty limited. So we had to think about ways that the people were going to get into Windsor. We also had to think about the road network capacity. And again, Windsor's not got a huge amount of roads into it, but we also had to think about the public transport. And one of the things that made me smile a lot is London kept talking about TfL and how they were going to share information in the buses and the tubes. In Windsor, we have 2 train companies, but pretty much no buses really. So we did have to factor in the public transport messaging. And if any of you were following the funeral, one of the train lines wasn't working on the day of the funeral. So there was a big impact to us about how people were going to get in and out of Windsor on the day. The other things around risk, you need to think about who's managing the website and all of your social media in the organisation, and customer services, because they're a vital part in talking to residents and businesses, and that we brought them into our team for this particular event. And the final thing I'd really talk about is who updates the important people. So there for me are the councillors and the directors. We just need to make sure everybody's looped in. And you need to record every decision. So if you make a decision, you need to make sure you've written it down on a piece of paper and why you've done that. And this picture here is of the long walk, and it gives me goosebumps because that's 102,000 people on the long walk. And in the background, you can see there's more people on the long walk that were walking in. They just wanted to be part of it. So you need to think about how they were getting in and how they were getting out and the messages that we would need to use. The other risk is around your team. So have you thought about the staff resources for your own team and the wider organisation? And have you thought about the staff welfare? So I've seen a lot of stuff about people saying in comms particularly, they didn't get time to grieve for the Queen, or they didn't get that moment to reflect. And I certainly haven't got to that point. I've not watched any of the funeral. I've got up to Proclamation Day for King Charles, but I've not watched any of that other content, just because we were so involved, we didn't have time to do it. But equally, I want that moment for myself where I can watch it, and probably with a box of tissues and cry. But it's really important that you give your staff time to reflect, and an opportunity to grieve. Even if they need support, I know it's the Queen and she wasn't, not our friend, but it's something that's really close to us. And in this photo, you can see a mixture of my actual comms team, people I've nicked from other organisations, and also at the very back is my son, who I persuaded to come to Proclamation with me. He's only 14. He took all the photos for the council and they're used on our social media platforms. So involve everybody in the comms team. That's what I say. And so some numbers that I'm pretty proud of. As I said, we had over 100 comms officers from 60 partner organisations. We also issued a number of press releases, did a load of media interviews for various different major UK networks and obviously international people as well. We sent out 14 newsletters, and that's to residents, businesses and councillors, which is a huge amount, but also the open rate of 70% is really high. And you can see that our videos got some really good interaction, but the website hit, which I mentioned earlier. We had one web page with all the information, 50,000 visits to a dedicated page over 12 days, and that's compared to 10,000 average visits per week for the website. So I think that just demonstrates why it's so important to have one web page and one version of the truth. And then you can see at the bottom the new followers that we got via Facebook, Twitter, and our residents newsletter. And then some inside info that obviously I've not released and it's not in the public domain, but one of my favourite tweets is a resident who was moaning to the council about how noisy it was at 3 a.m. because the military had come out of the barracks that she lives opposite, and she was complaining about the noise. I was tempted to respond to her to say I'd quite like to be in your front room so I could record it, but I was told probably that wasn't the most appropriate response. But it's just fascinating how everybody thinks that this is the council's fault. It's the military marching from the barracks that she lives opposite. Anyway, and then the top tips, just to wrap up everything that I've talked about. Planning, partnerships and practice. So we have planned this event for a number of years. I've been at the council for 8 years, and pretty much on day 2, I got given a book and told you need to come up with a plan. And we've planned the content and everything around it for those years. The partnerships is really important. So stakeholder relationships is so important in an event like this, because when you need people, you really need people. And the practice, we've practiced so many times. And a month before it was announced the Queen died, we were actually with Thames Valley Police running through some scenarios. And that was really, really useful. And I think some tips that probably we shouldn't really share in public, that's Jodie, who's my right-hand woman in this project. So be kind to yourself. In a crisis, it's fine to eat junk food. So Greggs and McDonald's got a complete hammering during those 10 days. So I think they got an increase in their profits in Windsor and Maidenhead. But also, Jodie and I didn't have any black clothes that fitted because we've been in a pandemic for 2 years. So we had to do a complete rush out to M&S to get some new clothes. But I think there's some of the important things. Make sure you plan. Make sure you practice, make sure you work really hard with your partners. And then if you're in a crisis event like we were for 10 days, even though we knew it was going to happen, just be kind to yourself. And that's all from me. I'm sure there's going to be some questions.
Hello. There we go. You can see me now. Hi, thank you for talking us through that. It's absolutely amazing experience that you've had having to plan that. And like we were talking earlier, and it's not just this that you've had to plan, it's all the others as well. So you think one thing's going to go in your lifetime or in your career, and then you've got 3 others,
Yeah.
3 other bombshells thrown your way. But yeah, it's a fantastic achievement. And myself and Louisa were chatting before, and she said that she's actually leaving in November because she's had enough of it. No, I'm joking.
No, I've loved every minute, but yeah, it's ironic that it's that I was working in my notice period. So yeah, it's but yeah, it's good to do. So yeah, 2 royal weddings and 2 funerals, a 90th birthday and a jubilee. So I think I've done my lot.
Fantastic achievements.
Royal events. I'm hoping for an MBE. So if somebody can nominate me, that would be great.
Good wording. Good wording from the commsHERO community. I'm sure that'll equate to something, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm sure, like, we have massive impact, don't we? So yeah, I'm sure you can get an MBE for me.
Brilliant. So we have had some questions come in, so I'll just go through a few of them. So we have one from Emma Elstone. So she says, how restricted were you and what you could say, not just the embargoes, but also the content that you were pushing out?
So there's something called Earl Marshall briefings, and they happen on, I will probably get the days wrong, but it feels like it was D2, which was Saturday, and then Thursday. On the Saturday one, that is when they released the information about the bank holiday for the funeral, and they released the lying in state details. We had to wait until Thursday for them to release the details about the funeral, and actually the funeral bit in Windsor, so the committal and the procession. So we were not allowed to talk about it until that point. So can you imagine how frustrating that was from a resident point of view, but also a council point of view? So we are restricted. We're governed by that, and we're not allowed to send anything out because otherwise it gets shouted at by government. So
Fair enough.
yeah. So no, we weren't. And it was weird because a lot of other councils around us were sharing like memories of the Queen, and they were sharing a lot of other content. I felt we couldn't do it, so we had a very controlled message throughout that 10-day period.
Yeah. So another question that we've got here is coming from Caroline Howarth. She says, did you get any interagency hotspots you had to deal with during all this, or did everyone get along?
So funnily enough, everybody did get along, and I think it's because in 2018 we had a royal wedding. We had 2 royal weddings in 2018, and we created this partnership hub there, and we've had other activity, and we've managed to keep all the partners on board. And yes, you would think with egos maybe a bit that people wouldn't, but actually we did all really get on well, and we all were trying to achieve the same thing, which was to get really good comms out, and everybody was sharing all the information. So actually I think the hard work was done in 2018. We kept that up throughout the whole pandemic, and within the last, when Prince Philip died as well. So that rolling chain, we were in touch with everybody, and I think any issues were ironed out well in advance of the Queen's funeral and committal service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then another question that I have here is actually from Asif. He said, did you have to rehearse your comms action plan for events like the ones that you have experienced in the last 12 months? So, and all of them really, did you ever have to go over anything?
Yeah. So just before Prince Philip's was announced that he died, we'd actually run through a whole training session, and we have done previously like not minute by minute, but hour by hour stuff. So I've been in a room where we've literally gone day of death, what happens, D+3, which is proclamation, what happens, and you have to run through everything. And then people will not literally throw things at you, but they'll say, well, what happens if? And so then you have to be able to respond to it, which is what I was saying about the planned reactive content that we had in our back pocket just in case, because we predicted, and we've had scenarios where Windsor was so full we had to close it. The train lines had gone down, which actually did happen. We've had all sorts of scenarios that we practiced. We have been in a room where we've done hour by hour scenario testing, and it really helps. And if we hadn't have done that, I don't think it would have been. We would have got through it, but I just think it looked quite polished, and it's because we've done so much hard work.
Yeah, so many man hours has gone in behind the scenes. Yeah, was there anything that came up on any of the significant events that you've done that was sort of a curveball? You were like, oh, I didn't quite plan for that.
So the one, and this was in the paper, but it did make me chuckle, on Prince Philip's funeral, we all got into the police station, and we're just about to send the gold report up to government to say everything's fine, it's all under control, no issues. And then the power started going out in Windsor, and it went out in our what's called event control, which is in a building called York House, and that's next to the Long Walk. So that building went, the CCTV went, then Windsor Castle barriers, where you go into Cambridge Gates, went. Then the barracks, and me and the head of comms at TVP went, what's going on here? So as the report went off to government, the gold operation where the police are, who are in charge of it, and the council, we were trying to get hold of Southern Electric to find out what was going on.
Mhm.
My instinct, if anybody has watched Cobra on Sky One, is that we were having some sort of horrendous power outage in the whole of Windsor. But actually what happened, somebody had just cut through some cables on the long walk.
Typical.
We hadn't, on for Prince Philip's funeral, we didn't have the electricity partners and the water partners in our multi-agency hub. So that was a lesson learned. We quickly scrabbled around and found them, and then they were included in the Queen's multi-agency hub. But yeah, that was a bit of a curveball, because at the time I was like, oh my God, what's happening?
Oh, no.
What's happening? This is awful. And yeah, it just seemed quite surreal, but actually it was just somebody cutting through some cables.
Yeah, my goodness. Well, I suppose you learn from your mistakes or every eventuality, don't you? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
that it happened at that occasion, and maybe not, maybe this big scale event of what's just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't think we've got any more questions coming through. We're just having oh wait, no, we do. I'll get this one up. So was this the same process of comms that you would use for normal crisis comms?
Yeah, so we had gold, silver, and bronze. So gold, we had a gold for both, like the council operations, but also the comms. So there was a gold, silver, bronze operation for the council comms. So there was me, and you probably heard of a lady called Rachel Royal. So she was my gold as well. So I was able to take some time off, and Rachel became my gold. Silver, we had numerous people on the silver calls because there were so many multi-agency meetings. So there was about 4 people that were silver, and then bronze were obviously all of the people, the 47 that I mentioned in the comms team. So yes, there was a gold, silver, bronze approach within the comms team, but also we matched the gold, silver, bronze that the council were operating, and then that matched what the police were doing as well. And so just as an example, in the gold where I was sat in police station, we had me, council, there was fire brigade, ambulance, military, and police. Yeah,
Wow.
and then a government representative as well. But yeah, it was huge.
Can imagine. Well, I think that is everything. We've had loads of comments in here from Dylan saying just incredible, even listening to you. Lovely gift there. Saying that was fabulous, that you're such an amazing team. So yeah, you should be incredibly proud of what you've done.
Yeah, I think from a team of 3, and I talk about 3, that's the comms team leader, the internal comms officer, and the press officer. I don't include myself because head of comms does other stuff. But you go from a team of 3 to bringing in mutual aid that gets you up to 48, 47 people is just incredible for a 10-day period. And there must be 47 people in a council comms team somewhere, but I just don't believe that definitely doesn't happen in Berkshire. There's not many of us in the Berkshire unitaries, and that just demonstrates the level of work we had to issue, both social media, press releases, dealing with the press, dealing with press accreditation, all of that sort of stuff, and then going to all of the meetings. And I think for Prince Philip, I had around 8 meetings in one day. And that was just horrific in terms of, you just don't have time to breathe sometimes. No. So that methodology changed for the Queen's funeral because there was just so much to do that's why we had the 4 silvers, because they were able to take over other meetings that I just couldn't go to.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. You're absolutely amazing. Let's start the application for the MBE after this session.
Yeah, if you could, that would be great.
Thank you. So lots of hearts and lots of applause are going out for you. That's incredible. So thank you so much again, Louise. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Glad you all found it useful. I hope you found it useful.
Thank you.
Thanks.